born in Serbia, in Belgrade. It was Yugoslavia when I was born. My family moved to New York City when I was 3. I grew up in New York City, stayed there for school, etc. Lived in Zurich, Switzerland, on and off for about 4 years. And then it was time to come back to America. And Miami was a 6-month experiment. It was, let's see how it goes. And if not, just go back to New York City. I've never been hired by anyone. Never had a job.
If that's not a driver, I don't know what is.
It's not a choice. Like, I don't even know. Like, I wouldn't even know how to get a job. It's not, I don't have a resume. I've never been employed.
Oh, what are your thoughts on crypto in the world?
I think we're so early days. It hasn't shaken out yet. It's inevitable. It's inevitable, but I don't have necessarily an opinion on any one of them. But it's going to go, it's inevitable.
And welcome back to SALESBIZ. I appreciate you all taking the time. Before we kick it off, folks, once again, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed. Like this episode if you find any value out of this content, and go ahead and drop us some feedback down below. Today, my guest is an entrepreneur out of Florida. She has her own business, Analytics.Miami, and she has a lot of insight to share today. So I'm super excited to have her, Miss Anna Bozovic. Anna, welcome.
Very good. Thank you so much for having me. Great pronunciation of the last name. It's that the Russian language skills helped you out there.
Eastern European skills are finally kicking in. Appreciate you taking the time, Anna. Before we kick it off, once again, let's talk a little bit about before we start with your background. Let's talk a little bit about how you ended up in Miami. How did it all start for Anna?
Miami was a bit of an experiment. I moved here before it was cool, before the whole, Mayor of Miami is moving to Miami thing, about 8-9 years ago. So I was born in Serbia, in Belgrade. It was Yugoslavia when I was born. My family moved to New York City when I was 3. I grew up in New York City, stayed there for school, etc. Lived in Zurich, Switzerland, on and off for about 4 years. And then it was time to come back to America. And Miami was a 6-month experiment. It was, let's see how it goes. And if not, just go back to New York City. And I'm still here. So it went well, and I love it. I love Miami.
How could you leave New York, though? Talk about the New York Minute. You're an entrepreneur. New York Minute's real.
In New York, because it's so much been my home. Like, I stayed there for college. I stayed all throughout my 20s. That it was always an easy assumption that I could go back whenever I wanted to. I'm very comfortable in New York. It's like homey, and there was a feeling of needing to get out there and see some new places, new things. So Zurich was an experiment too. All these experiments ended up lasting longer than anticipated. I love New York. New York is wonderful. New York has this great energy, obviously. But I don't know, there's benefits of putting yourself in new places always. And I always felt that it would be easy to go back. So I didn't have any angst about that.
Absolutely. So you actually came from the East, then you moved to New York, and then you moved back to Zurich. How did that all happen?
Zurich was an experiment also. I've always worked for myself at the time, especially. It was very easy for me to live anywhere. And eventually, Zurich, Switzerland is a very unique place. I was kind of drawn to it that way. As their system of governance is very decentralized federalist system. Is actually what America was based upon. They have something like 20 plus cantons in this tiny country. And at the time, it was over half of representatives were not party affiliated. And the highest law of the land is the direct democracy vote, which is how they stayed out of the EU, right, how they stayed out of world wars, all that stuff. So it's a very unique place to see in action. It's distinct. It hasn't sort of morphed into that, amorphous blob of the rest of the homogenized world. It stayed unique while being in the middle of Europe. So that's kind of cool. But having said that, like, their vibe isn't really my vibe. They had 1,000 years of peace and they gave us chocolate. No, I'm kidding. They do. You need some angst, innovation, some destruction to fuel the creative fires.
Like where this is going already.
No, life is so good and easy. Everyone's super zen and chill, and it's great. But what? You wake up at 6 and go hiking every morning? I mean, I don't know.
There's some benefits, though, I think, to actually building a family in Switzerland, right? Was it Monte Carlo?
Oh my God, it's like utopia. You have 5-year-old kids holding hands, walking to school by themselves. It's like in Zurich, not like in a little village. It's super safe. It's nice. Yes, it's like this nice, perfect padded room.
Just not your scene, clearly.
No, but I appreciate it. No, I appreciate how they stay separate. I appreciate, as sort of antisocial as they are and seemingly uptight. No, it's true. But at the same time, they respect personal freedoms a lot. So if you want to go and, they've always the Limmat River there, and little bridges. If you want to be naked with a beer and your dog and smoking a joint and jump off the bridge into the Limot, like you can. And if you drown and you're an idiot, they're going to be like, the idiot drowned. They won't, sue the city and close it all, right?
I can't believe you left now. No, you had me at naked and smoking a joint, but but you did move back. You went to New York. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the business experience now. How did it all start for you? What inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
Oh, I've never been hired by anyone. I've never had a job.
If that's not a driver, I don't know what is.
It's not a choice. Like, I don't even know. Like, I wouldn't even know how to get a job. It's not, I don't have a resume. I've never been employed. So, and I've never wanted to be employed at all, which is what it is. And
what inspired you though? Did you have family influence? Did you have a mentor that said, hey, having a job sucks?
Well, my father is an entrepreneur. He had his own business. We're not close though. I'm not close to my parents. I haven't spoken in 20 years, but he is. But I think that I've always been a little bit of an intellectual weirdo. So I've never wanted to be part of somebody else's thing. I always felt undervalued as part of somebody else's thing. And not that I wouldn't take orders or do what I was supposed to, that's not the issue. It's just that I always felt like it wasn't a good use of my time. And I think going back to something we were saying earlier is how short-term greedy are you versus long-term greedy, right? So if you believe in your path and your vision, then, you don't need to try to grind out whatever money you can today from whatever, may happen to fall in your lap if you believe in your bigger vision.
Absolutely. I mean, there is some sort of service end of day when it comes to being an entrepreneur, whether you're serving your customers or you're serving your employees, all the above. I guess there's some, but at the same time, you're building your own foundation. So I get it. Did you have a specific industry that you started dabbling in with respect to entrepreneurship before diving into other passions?
Right. So my background, I studied kind of odd theoretical math and physics at Columbia. And so I studied really theoretical stuff. I didn't like anything with a laboratory. I liked space-time physics and weird stuff. and I liked the creative aspect of it. It was fun for me.
Right.
And then when I was very young, I started college when I was 17. When I was very young, I thought I would get a PhD and go and do that. But I did research 2 summers and I dislike academia a lot. As much as I dislike corporations, academia is a bureaucracy. It's not for me. And so when I realized that, I was kind of well, what do I do? But when you're 17, 18, 19, you don't know what the world looks like. You've never been out there. You have these ideas of what you want to do, but you have no idea what daily life would look like with those paths. So who the hell knows? So when I realized that was not my path, I was well, what do I do now? Who the hell knows? And all I knew pretty much was that I never wanted to be in a hamster wheel. That was my one overwhelming feeling. And I saw that most people are just on hamster wheels of various pay grade, right? About 8-9 years ago. So I was born in Serbia, in Belgrade. It was Yugoslavia when I was born. My family moved to New York City when I was 3. I grew up in New York City, stayed there for school, etc. Lived in Zurich, Switzerland on and off for about 4 years. And then it was time to come back to America. And Miami was a 6-month experiment. It was, let's see how it goes. And if not, just go back to New York City. Gotcha. But none of it it's very seldom life-altering money, but it's always a hamster wheel.
What about the academia side? I mean, someone that went to Columbia, that's not an easy thing to get into. What drove you away from education?
College, though.
I'm sorry?
I didn't really try to get into college.
Oh, you're one of those whiz kids that just had a bunch of offers?
No, I took my SAT cold. I'm not I really hated school. And I was a very not a happy kid. My parents and I didn't get along. I trained 5 hours a day, fenced competitively. I would lock the gym up every night. Wow. I was I cut school all the time. I don't like the structure of it. So actually I dropped out. I didn't graduate. I dropped out my junior year.
I dropped out senior year, right? They were going to hold me back. So I said, getting my GED.
I was whatever. Cause I didn't want, I saw no path that completing that degree led me towards. I never wanted to apply for a job. And when I realized I didn't want to be in academia, I was why am I here?
Absolutely. I get it. If that's how high school was for me. Honestly, I actually went back and got my degree. I talked about this a few times, but it was only just my mom wanted really me to get an education. It was very important to her. She unfortunately passed away. So I was all right, I'm going to fulfill her legacy by doing this. But I literally just slid the bare minimum to just get that piece of paper, to be perfectly honest. I totally hear you on the academia side.
I mean, if you want like be a lawyer or be a doctor where you need that
Right.
certification, then you have to. But if you don't, what's it doing for you? And so many colleges in America, I mean, just look at like the growth of student debt. It's criminal. It's this whole ridiculous industry. And like for what? Most schools, like they can't even take a percentage, really. And they're accruing all this debt. And it's like, for what?
Absolutely. You're reading my mind here. So first business, mining Almanac. Talk to me a little bit about that. What
Oh
was
my
that?
God, you dug that up. I forgot about that. Okay, so I was doing
Oh, I
that.
dug everything up.
Woo, he's there. No, I did that. That was actually while I was living in Switzerland. And that's actually why I was in Kiev. I had some developers working for us that were in Kiev. So I spent 3 months there then. That was an analysis tool for publicly traded mining stocks.
Wow.
It was super nerdy. It was like a
Mining,
very neat,
like coal
yeah, like
mining.
stuff on like the Toronto Exchange, all that stuff,
Oh,
like mining stocks, publicly traded mining stocks. And so it was an analysis tool because there are all these metrics that are specific to the mining industry, like just tons of them, and they're all used in like valuing these stocks, which may or may not have any value. Who the hell knows? It's all like a little voodoo. I don't know. I don't think stock picking works at all unless you actually have inside information. But anyways, it was a platform that did that.
absolutely. Was it so 4 years? It sounds like you spent there. What made you want to stop? Was it a failure? Was it an exit? How did it all work out?
Yes, super good question. So I really disliked the project towards the end of it. As you can probably tell from my tone. And it wasn't a failure. I just like, this is a funny thing. So I stopped talking to my parents when I was 20 years old, and I quit fencing also when I quit school. And in my mind, I was like, I'm doing my own thing. I don't need their approval. I'm doing whatever. But I was still doing things that I felt were like technically impressive and that would have impressed my father. If it's crazy talk, right? Like, right. So my father got his PhD in electrical engineering. That's why he came to America, and then he had his own company, so he did very well. And I realized, like, why am I doing this? Just because I can? Like, I don't actually like any of this. And it was one of those like pivotal things where it's like, all right, this is life. We just have our time. Is this really how I want to use my time? And the answer was like, no. I didn't know what the solution was, but I really had this epiphany where I was like, I'm just doing this because it's like impressive and hard and because I can, but I'm not actually enjoying it at all.
I never understood that with parents, because we're both from Eastern European families. I mentioned this a few times on my options were either dentist or lawyer, and if anything else was basically a disaster.
Like you're going to be homeless working at McDonald's. They would say this to me, like,
right,
yes.
like, yeah, go be a chambal, like a little roughneck or something like that. Exactly. No disrespect to the roughnecks out there, I get it, but just wasn't my niche. So I never really understood that. But when you say this, are you talking about fencing, or are you talking about actually the going to Colombia and all that stuff?
Oh, both of it. I quit both at the same time.
It's pretty badass to be a sword fighter. I mean, what's wrong with that?
I know. I liked it. My coach was
so good.
Right? Yeah.
Did you actually do competitions and stuff?
Yeah. I fenced at a world-class level. Yeah. No, I actually train now. It's just so funny. So sports, my dad was a world-class athlete. He was on the national team for karate in Yugoslavia. And so I did, like, my younger sister, she won't be offended if she hears this. She's a terrible athlete. Sorry. She can't catch a ball. Like, she literally can't do a push-up. And and I was like his son growing up. I did all the sports with him before we stopped speaking when I was like 10, 12, whatever it was. And I'm an excellent athlete. And so I actually, I ran Masters track. The first year I ran the 400, I came in second in the country in my age group. And then I train with a bunch of professional fighters. Like Fifth Street Boxing Gym is in Miami Beach. That's like where Ali trained back in the day. And different building, but whatever, legacy continues. And I do training camp with a lot of like big fighters. So I run with them. I do conditioning with them. So like, amazing. If you see me in a track here in South Beach, I'm running with a bunch of tatted up killers after my nerdy stuff.
A lot of fighters over there in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I know actually one of my cousins, well, I'm married into the family, but he actually manages fighters. There's a ton of them over there in Miami.
And Florida was one of the first states to sanction fights during COVID. So we're like the fight mecca now, even more.
Right. And I think Dana White, he was preaching Florida the other day on the news.
Yes,
like, hey,
they had a big UFC event. That was amazing. Exactly.
Had a lot of shit for it. But...
fighting. Like the fastest growing sport in America right now is bare knuckle boxing. Like for the record, it's crazy. BKFC. A lot of friends who fight that. There's a big card coming up. So we have a country that was 45% obese leading into COVID, right? And it's just true. And heavily medicated. The usage of prescription, anti-anxiety, antidepressant, all this stuff's going through the roof. All this toxic masculinity stuff, all these things. Meanwhile, everyone's paying to watch two shredded guys try to kill each other with their bare hands, right? Like it's crazy.
Not just guys. Paige Van Zandt was fighting in that with.
Yeah, she fought Britain Hart, who trains her gym. Yeah, I know.
She does? Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your current business, because it seems like you had a couple of businesses, but I want to talk about Analytics.Miami. What's that all about? Tell us the
yeah, that kind of also, so right, then I moved to Miami Beach and I was like, what do I want to do with myself? And what kind of sparked that was a little bit, was the contrast between Miami and Zurich. Which was enormous contrast. I was saying in Zurich, the building I lived in was 175 years old, and the Swiss call that like new construction. And there are these little stores that sell pictures of various streets there, and like you have to go back 300-400 years before you see a difference. Like nothing changes there, right? Then literally, you're like, whoa, the street looked the same in 1850. Of course it did. And so I come here and, there was 100 years ago, there was literally nothing. 120 years ago, there was nothing. It was swampland, right? And the whole skyline here didn't exist 20 years ago, like pretty much at all. So everything you see was built like this. And that's a very, very different energy. Like I appreciate that energy more. You feel like it's a new city. You feel like it's growing. And then real estate is such a big part of that growth. Like, I mean, literally you see it. The skyline is built. All these things are happening.
Especially right now in Florida. It's absolutely insane. I think you guys are out of inventory at this point. There's no people are staying in hotels waiting for inventory to pop up before they could even place an offer and still getting outbid.
Yeah, single family 1 to 3 million is the best performing segment, which is interesting. It's 1 to 3 million single family is like off the charts, because that's like the price range that is for people like with jobs in New York who are moving their families. Yeah, 1 to 3 million single family homes. That's actually what's driving it.
It was always the snowbirds coming from New York and just chilling in Miami, but now it's a permanent move, especially with everything going on in New York. Yep. I'm in California. Let's not even get there. But I completely understand. But so what does the actual business do though?
Sure. So when I came here, I started to learn about real estate and so forth. That was part of the story. I started meeting people in the industry. And then I got a broker's license. And then this is a funny thing. Like real estate, especially residential real estate, the data is so simple. These are very, very like small closed data sets. Like it's not hard to show what's going on. You obfuscate like intentionally. It's really not complicated data. And at the time, like COVID saved this market, to be completely honest. Like it really did. Before COVID, we had record high levels of inventory in the luxury space, which is now what got saved. And the decline started really like 2013 was transaction volume decline. That was the peak. And prices started coming down in 2015. So I have all my own data. Like I would just export raw data from the MLS and I run like algos and stuff on it. And I poof, I export things. I do a long-term chart. And I remember looking at my data and looking at stuff that was put out by major brokerages. And I was like, whoa, like, how are we talking about the same thing? It wasn't like they were lying per se. It was more like they were presenting the data in such a way that was misleading and rendered it meaningless. And
can you give me an example?
Sure. Like, for instance, I would report that transaction volume was down 60% or 40, whatever it was, off of highs. And all the reporters are shocked because really? And that was the most obvious stat. Or like I published a supply and demand report. Like this is simple stuff, guys, supply and demand, okay? Like you show transaction volume, which is demand like this, and you show supply going like this. And everyone is like shocked. They're like, how profound.
Is there a reason why they're masking that? Is it just a marketing ploy or?
Yes, because the conversation around residential real estate is driven by the brokerages that sell you the stuff.
Got it. So if there's too much supply, that means there's a lot more room to negotiate, and I'm guessing getting a better deal. Yeah,
they're trying to like define the market by what they put out, right? So it's like the worst example of insider trading you can imagine. No, it's true, and it's unfortunate because for like your average person, the purchase of their home is the largest investment they make.
Absolutely.
And it's like wrong, and it's not hard to present the right information. So I started to put out like these reports, and I was to me, it was funny, not funny isn't the word, but like, it was so obvious is the word. It was so obvious. And everyone was like, wow, how profound. And I'm like, no, I'm just saying the sky is blue. Like it's not complicated data.
Like anyone knocked on your door and was like, oh no, that's total bullshit. I contest that. Has that ever happened?
No, the best was I was in a story, this was real estate publication, this is before COVID, and it was me and like 4 or 5 guys that are heads of all the major brokerages, right? And they had their data coming out, and they're all like speaking in circles because they don't really want to say what's going on. And the reporter, who's my friend, calls me up, like messages me at like 2 a.m, and he's like, "So I spoke to this person, and like, what do you think? Do you think the market's going to get better?" And I'm like, "Oh my God!" And I just sent him like 20 charts showing like disconnects. And so I said to him, I was like, the Miami market is not a magic unicorn that will defy supply and demand fundamentals. And then they led with that quote on top of the page. I died. It was like, yeah.
Where the hell is an NDA when you need one?
No, it's hilarious. But no, it's the nature of the industry, unfortunately. And it's like, there are really good agents out there. Many are not. The extent to which they know nothing is shocking.
So it sounds like your target market is actually brokerages that just want to get better metrics for.
Oh no, so I don't sell that. I don't sell that stuff.
You don't sell the data. Okay.
No. After the mining, good point. So after the mining almanac thing, I decided I do not want to be in the data business. Like, it's just not my thing. And so like, I put out like quarterly or bi-yearly. It's not that difficult for me, but it becomes like a voice in the market. And what it really has been for me is a branding tool.
Ah, okay. So
Yeah.
what's the ideal market? I guess what's the ideal customer at this point?
I work with either high net worth individuals or institutions or groups that are looking to invest in the area or want thoughts on their real estate plans, things like that.
Got it. Okay. So if I wanted to do some like a major high-rise development or something like that in Sunny Isles or Hollywood or something, you would be the best person for me to reach out to and try to get my data in order.
Correct. And then I'll also do like because the resi data got me in the press so much, and most resi brokers are not so good. I get contacted a lot for that, and in those cases, if somebody wants to purchase something, but like I'm not, I don't like drive around with people. It's like men with cash. Those are my customers for residential. Like, to be honest, and that's cool. I'll do that. People will call me for deals, and I'll be like, "That's the deal." And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So it sounds like COVID, if anything, has exponentially grown your business as opposed to actually directly impacted it in a negative way.
Correct. And also, for me personally, I appreciated the sort of the cutting of the noise.
Can you elaborate? What do you mean?
Because there's like a cease to the chatter, right? There's like basically an economic full stop event of some sort. And I kind of appreciated it because it gave me time to focus, is even quite the word, but like, yeah, like narrow down on what I actually want to do. It cut the background noise a lot, which I appreciated.
Got it. So how do
you don't need COVID to do that. You could do that anytime. That was the lesson. Like cut the noise and focus on what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say though, I work in SaaS, software as a service, and it's unfortunate that it drove it to that level, but I have never seen so much inquisition for improving technologies, improving operations, processes, etc. Up until now, it no longer became a nice to have. It's now an absolute must. Exactly. You need to electronically sign something. You need to store something in a cloud storage, things like that. So, but I hear you. I mean, I didn't need that to happen in order for me to make an X amount of calls or reach out to people in order to get that done. But it unfortunately helped that way.
Yep.
So where do you see the future for your business at this point?
Yeah, good question. I'm actually right now putting together pieces and a few things that I'm launching. So the existing stuff continues. I'm launching a show that's called Ask Anna. That's going to be kind of fun. It's going to be on Apple TV and Roku. And
there you go.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. One of the best byproducts so far of the work that I put out the last 2 years is that I've met. They reached out to me. I met some of the biggest entities, players in the industry, and I love speaking with people who are completely self-made, who created so much right out of the vision of their minds. You learn so much just from seeing how they act, how they operate, and it's often different than how most people think it is. By the way, like very very much. And so I'm going to have a bunch of these people on, which is going to be super fun. And we're going to call it Ask Anna because that's kind of been like my fun thing. People send in questions, we do that. And then I'm also launching like an acquisitions vehicle of some sort that's coming out soon too.
Acquisitions for real estate?
Yeah, or hard money lending.
Gotcha. Thoughts on crypto? I mean, you seem deep in analytics. You're diving in acquisitions now, and you're in real estate brokerage side. So what are your thoughts on crypto in the world?
I think we're so early days. It hasn't shaken out yet. It's inevitable. It's inevitable, but I don't have necessarily an opinion on any one of them, but it's going to go, it's inevitable. I just, there will probably also be further government regulation on it at some point. And how that shapes up, I have no idea because it's still so early. Is it also a measure of inflation, right? That's the other question. Like equities are now. I don't know. It's so early. It's so early. That's one of the things that like COVID, like the good trend of COVID, is, as you mentioned, is it's forced technology adoption, right? By switching habits, because we were living in this like post World War II world where we took the internet and we incorporated it into existing habits, right? Because habits are sticky. And it's like, oh, this new toy came. It's like a fancy printer, but we didn't redo office buildings, schools, and now we kind of are. So it's accelerating us into the future, which is good. But the bad thing is that it's also accelerating the, completely horrendous monetary and fiscal policy debt situation that we had before, which was unsustainable before. Like it was going asymptotic, and now it's even more. And cryptos are part of that story. How exactly it's going to play out, I'm not sure. But it's like whenever charts go vertical, right, it's not going to end well.
Never does.
It never does. And the sovereign debt charts, the negative yielding debt, like we've never had negative yielding debt in the history of money. So all these charts approached vertical before COVID. And then COVID came and it became like the smoke screen for all that. That was all in place before. And now it's got even more at the same time that crypto has taken off. So it's all part of that. And like, I don't know, there's no graceful exit from that. There just isn't.
I mean, it's typical physics. What goes up must come down.
No, so it's crazy. Everything the Federal Reserve is doing is trying to forestall a crash in debt. That's all they're doing.
Yeah. It makes me very nervous. I will say I am a crypto investor as well. I've made out, quite well in that regard. Was I knowing what the hell I was investing in? Absolutely not. But I knew, as you mentioned, it's something new that still hasn't been tapped to its fullest potential yet. So, and I'm one of those guys that needs to be early there. So that's why I put money into it. Did I put a substantial amount? No, but substantially came out that way. I'm just constantly curious about how people see crypto in this space right now, because I'm just seeing it more and more daily. And now people are accepting Dogecoin payments. I never in a million years thought that Dogecoin would be a payment driver for things, services, food, et cetera.
It's it's like the Robinhood trading. It's like a video game for people. That's what it is.
I call it a slot machine. So you're almost there.
Yes.
It's online gambling, technically.
That's in a way. 1,000%. And you had people sitting at home, right? Robinhood usage, all that stuff like skyrocketed. I think it's part of the same thing. And they're seeing stuff go up, 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 up. And they're like, well, hey, let me get on board too.
Yep. And that, honestly, that's exactly why I put money into Dogecoin. There was only there was only 3 options there. And I knew, just based on the exponential growth of Robinhood, I knew that people are going to be, okay, well, I bought AT&T, I bought Apple. Well, I have like $4 left. Why not throw it into this 0.000 thing stock and, let it just sit there? That was my rationale around it. Literally, I did not know anything about crypto or Dogecoin besides that. Next thing you know, it goes up 13,000%.
Fantastic. Exactly. Happy times.
What?
What?
Okay.
Why not? I mean, it's a funny phenomenon too, when people are like, oh, is it really money, this? I'm like, well, how is it less money than the dollar when you can just print so many dollars?
Exactly. That's a very, very good point. We've been printing trillions of dollars, literally printing country economies within a matter of weeks.
Yes. How's that more real? There's no gold connection. That was long gone. And now it's just going like, what? Like, and the stimulus stuff, printing money for that, like, I mean, UBI is going to come like 1,000%. People already got used to that, which is another thing. But no, I think it's great. And it calls out the absurdity of the fiat currency system, which is not a bad thing.
Absolutely. I love the drive. Anna, what advice would you have for someone that is listening right now, 18 years old or 19 years old? Like, I want to be that gal. What advice would you have for her?
Be yourself. Don't be me. That's the advice I have to give them.
Well, you know what I mean? It's like I stepped away from my parents.
Especially if people are young. I don't believe in time scarcity. It doesn't serve you at any age. But especially if you're young, like, get off the time scarcity. Like, you have time. Don't, like I was saying, I was 17, 18 years old in some like machine at school. Like, you're just going through these steps. You don't know what you want. You don't know what the world looks like at all. So the most important thing is to learn how to listen to your intuition and your gut and learn what feels good. If you have to convince yourself that something feels good, then it probably isn't. So it's like, no, it's true. It's like people, you have to convince yourself you like someone, you probably don't. It's the same thing like with life. So like learn to listen to yourself, have faith, and don't be scared. Don't make scarcity and fear-based decisions, especially if you're young, you have time. So really, really figure out what makes you feel alive. What's the biggest sort of manifestation of your persona? Don't be scared to be yourself. It's like it's our fear of being seen that keeps us invisible, I think. So just be you, get that silence in your head. What anyone else thinks doesn't matter. And then figure out what makes you happy. And then in terms of how that translates into work, like deliver value first. Deliver value, be worthwhile. Or if people perceive you as having value, they'll come to you.
Absolutely.
And I would say that's the most important thing. Be yourself and figure out a way that you could uniquely be your authentic self and deliver value somehow. And that's going to look different for everyone.
What about being a business owner? Because, we could have confidence, we could have persona, but funding a business and running a business, all that's not really for everyone. It seems like you got the game down. What advice would you have for them?
Well, I would also say then to be real with yourself. Like you asked me if I ever had a job and I kind of laughed. I don't have a resume. So no, be real with yourself. Not everyone can do that. You have to really not be scared of the future because no one's giving you anything. It's all creation of your own mind. So if you're the type, and there's nothing wrong with either way. There are many ways of living, but if you're the type of person that needs to feel like there's a path there given to you by somebody else, then it's not for you. You have to be okay with being like, in the abyss, so to speak, and creating your own path. And also being very emotionally strong. That's what it is too. You can't let there are always failures. There's always something, right? But you can't let that affect your vibe. You have to just be non-reactive, be zen about it. And that, by the way, is like that's like training, like we waste all this time in school learning all this crap we're never going to use. And no one teaches you how to think. And that's so important.
I kind of disagree with you on that one. I feel like they're programming people to teach how to think, like go get a job, go to school, get your degree, get married.
1,000%. What I mean about how to think is, I don't mean that. I mean how to think in a non-reactionary way. Right. Gotcha. Right.
Okay.
where you're not a victim of your surroundings and what people are doing around you. Where you can like take a hit and be like, all right, define, where your reflex, it's like when you train a sport, right? You train muscle memory, you train how to react. And I think the same thing applies to your mind. Something happens that's not great. If your reflexive response is to go cry and feel bad about yourself, or your reflexive response could be like, okay, that was great, next.
Yeah.
And that's something you can learn.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing I learned in life is short. So if you're going to live someone's life, live your own damn life. Don't live someone else's life, including your parents, family, etc. Everyone has their own journey, their own vision. It seems like you and I are speaking the same language.
I know, we're right on this, exactly. No, 1,000%. Life is short, and you know what? Time is our most valuable thing. Time and health. And just don't do things that you don't want to do. I mean, you were also lucky to be live now. Like even with COVID in 2021, like we have so many. Like we're so far removed from survival issues. Like my grandmother turns 98 in May, and she was born. She's awesome. She was born in 1923 in Macedonia, and her mother was born in the 1880s. My grandma was the youngest of 6 kids in Muslim Ottoman occupied Macedonia as a woman, right? Like, we're so lucky to be here now. You know what I mean?
At 98, out of all, the transitions I'm sure she encountered coming all the way here.
Plumbing in her house when she was a kid, and now she has free video chat.
Talk about evolution.
How awesome is that, right?
Last question for you. If you were to go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice to your 10-year-old self, what would you tell younger Anna Bozovic?
Oh, my 10-year-old self. That's a great question.
I was going to say, I usually say 18, but you already had shit down when you were 18. So I'm scaling way back with you.
That was like one of my most conflicted ages, actually, was like 10 to 13, 14 before I started training, and sports really saved me. So I would tell myself that I was really not a happy kid at 10. So I would tell myself that have some more fun and it's all going to be okay.
Love that.
I mean, yeah, because 10 sports saved me. Like, thank you for sports.
Well, and it's been such a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for taking the time. Continue crushing out of there, and please don't forget to stay in touch.